Hello and welcome back. I've been thinking about some ideas and some terms recently, quite a bit, wondering if I should make a video on them, and decided to go ahead and do it. Now I imagine for most of you who would watch a video like this, or have seen other videos of mine in the past, it's really not for you, because I might be talking about things that you already know. But there are a lot of people that don't seem to know this pretty basic gun information, so perhaps you can share it with them. I'm going to try to break down a lot of important terms that we all need to know, especially people that want to talk about guns or, more drastically, make laws about them. So there's a lot of disinformation that's floating around, sadly, especially among people that claim to be journalists and even politicians. So among those, when they talk about gun laws, gun problems, even gun control and making more laws, all I hear is from people talking about this that are completely uninformed about the topic that they would want to restrict or report on or make more laws on. So in one way, I'm okay with everyone or anyone having a difference of opinion. If your difference of opinion is not mine, that's great. No problem there. But your opinion should be informed. If your difference of opinion is based on lack of education, lack of information, or worse yet, disinformation, that's not really much of an opinion. So my hope is that people could inform themselves first and then make an opinion based on real, accurate information. Ignorance on this topic won't help, especially if you're trying to do something about it or actually solve a problem. So what I want to do is I want to start and talk about some terms that you hear a lot in the media, and also by politicians. Now, these are, for the most part, made-up terms, but you hear them all the time by people that say it as though they knew what they were talking about. Terms like assault weapon, assault rifle, military-style weapon, high power, rapid fire. Now, first of all, assault weapon is a made-up term, and that's what I want to talk about. Assault rifle can have a definition, and I'll get to that later. Military style really doesn't mean anything. Every firearm is or has been a military weapon. Single-shot bolt-action rifles are military weapons. Revolvers are military weapons. Shotguns are military weapons. Common pistols are military weapons. Semi-automatic rifles are also military weapons. So the fact that a weapon is or has been used by the military does not make it illegal or inappropriate for civilian use. High power. Well, any hunting rifle really is high power. That doesn't mean much. Any rifle is going to be high powered compared to a pistol. And so calling something high powered doesn't really matter. Most bullets can be supersonic, so that's something you don't want to get in front of. So if something is higher powered than something else, it just doesn't really make a difference. Rapid fire. Rapid fire is used a lot, especially trying to apply to just common legal weapons. No semi-automatic weapon can really be called rapid fire. That would only apply to fully automatic weapons, so we'll talk about that as well. Now, you have heard, I'm sure, and you may hear people talking about it again, the idea of banning assault weapons. There actually was a federal assault weapons ban, a 10-year ban, went from 1994 to 2004. It expired, and there really was no impetus to renew it. And while there was the ban, it didn't really have any effect on the types of violence that it was intending to ban. And the real reason is, if you try and ban something based on made-up terms, you're just not really going to get anywhere. It's easy to get past that. And I want to show you why you need to, if you're going to ban something or restrict it, you need to know what you're talking about. So if your law is based on a false description, it's easy to get around it by people that know what they're doing. And easy to get around it legally, whether you're a gun manufacturer or a gun owner or someone that makes accessories for guns. So first thing I'd like to do here is talk about what bans like this are meant to address. So they usually are trying to ban rifles, and you may have heard things like AR-15, AK-47, and those are the ones that are commonly mentioned, although there are dozens, if not hundreds, of other rifles that do the exact same thing. But it's almost always on a ban on a semi-automatic rifle that uses a centerfire cartridge with a detachable magazine. So what does all that mean? I want to show you some common calibers of bullets here. Now this is a .223 caliber bullet, or 5.56 millimeter. This is what's used by AR-15 and actually many rifles. This is a common, sort of mid-size, mid-caliber round. And the reason you can call this centerfire is right here. There is a center primer right there that the firing pin hits, and that's what ignites the gunpowder and shoots the bullet. Now the bullet is just this little guy right here. That's it. The rest of it is the casing and the gunpowder. But this is .223 caliber, and just to point out, this is a 9mm, very common and popular, although as I make this video, hard to find, handgun round. Also used in some rifles as well. So look at the caliber and size difference here. This is just a pistol round, 9mm, and this is 5.56 millimeter. So you can see it's actually quite a good bit smaller. But yet people seem to be afraid of this particular round and of guns that shoot this round. Now, as I said, any rifle is going to be more high-powered than a pistol. So which one of these do I want to get hit with? Well, the answer is neither of them. But you can see that the rifle is going to have more gunpowder, and with a longer barrel, it's going to have greater velocity and greater accuracy too. So anyway, 5.56 millimeter, 9mm. Both of these are centerfire cartridges. Right? There's the center where the firing pin hits it. Now, in contrast, this is a .22 caliber, .22 long rifle. This is called rimfire. And if you look at it here, what you can see is that there's no primer there. And so the firing pin of the gun is going to hit this on the edge, or the rim, kind of anywhere it just happens to fall there. And that's why this is called rimfire. So why we make a distinction here is that rimfire usually refers to smaller caliber bullets. The only one I can think in common use today is .22. But what's interesting is that this centerfire cartridge is actually the same caliber, oddly enough. Now this is going to have a lot more mass, a lot more velocity, and do more damage, but interestingly enough, .22 caliber, .223 caliber. Same caliber, basically. In fact, you can shoot this bullet out of a gun that shoots this. We'll talk about that later. So anyway, semi-automatic centerfire cartridge gun that has a detachable magazine. And here's an example of a detachable magazine, right? Just kind of drops out, and there we go. And so if you don't want to make the gun nuts angry at you, you'll call this a magazine and not a clip. For some reason, they really get mad at that. So anyway, magazine. So what I've just mentioned here, a rifle that shoots a centerfire cartridge, semi-automatic with a detachable magazine, literally describes dozens, if not hundreds, of modern guns. And when I say modern guns, I mean guns made like within the past 100 years or more. So how do we define what is an assault weapon? How did the government try to do it back in 1994? How are states like California trying to do it? Well, here's what I want to explain. This is the dreaded AR-15 right here. And so it is a centerfire semi-automatic rifle with a detachable magazine. Here's the magazine well right there. And what are some features that would make this an assault weapon as opposed to a legal safe rifle? The last one I want to talk about. First of all, pistol grip. You can see it has a pistol grip, so I can grip it here with my hand. And just for safety's sake, I'm going to open up the chamber and lock it open there. All right, always want to have some gun safety here, right? So pistol grip. This is the one thing here that more than anything else, people that like to define assault weapons are really afraid of this pistol grip. So instead of holding it like a traditional rifle, you've got a pistol grip. Now this doesn't really mean anything at all, because all rifles, even one with a pistol grip, are designed to be two-handed weapons. Your strong hand holds it here by the trigger, and your weak hand holds it up in the front by the foregrip. I mean, if you want to shoot it one-handed and pretend like you're Arnold Schwarzenegger in an action movie, you can. I'll be surprised if you hit anything with that. So really, it's a two-handed weapon. How you hold it, this doesn't really matter. Okay? Pistol grip. Having a pistol grip would, by many definitions, federal and California, make this an assault weapon. Adjustable foldable stock. Well, what's that? This is an adjustable stock. I can adjust its length. Why would you want to adjust a stock? Really for comfort. So when I'm shooting this, I'm going to adjust it right about here so it fits me and it's comfortable for me. When my daughters shoot it, they'll adjust it and make it a bit shorter so it's comfortable for them. Again, it's fairly light recoil weapon, really enough for anyone, even women and small children, or medium-sized children, let's say. But that's why you have an adjustable stock. It's to make the gun fit you more comfortable. And look how much this adjusts. It goes from here to here. That's all it does. So this feature right here would make this in California, and also according to, again, some federal regulations, when there's a ban, would make it an illegal assault weapon. Okay, what else? Vertical foregrip. Now, as I said, a rifle is a two-handed weapon. Your weak arm supports it in the forearm. This is a vertical foregrip right here. And it's not really part of the gun, it's just an accessory. This has rails where you can attach the types of things you want. And I've attached a vertical foregrip because I like to hold it right here to steady it while I'm shooting. Again, two-handed weapon. You need to steady it and control the muzzle rise. So that's it. The fact that it has this vertical foregrip would again make it an assault weapon by really any legal definition when they try to put that into effect. If it didn't have this, or if I just unscrewed it and took it off, now that's not an illegal feature. No vertical foregrip. As a comparison, this is a different configuration of an AR-15. This has an angled foregrip on the front. It also has a little short, stubby vertical one as well. So you see this angled foregrip is a place where you can hold it and steady it. By the definitions, an angled foregrip is okay. You can have an angled foregrip. That does not make this an assault weapon. But having a vertical foregrip does. Hopefully you can see the arbitrary nature of that. Next thing would be a flash hider. Right here you have on the end of the muzzle what's called a flash hider. Sadly, that's what it's called. More accurately, it's a muzzle device. This is called a birdcage flash hider because of its shape. Now the problem with the idea about a flash hider is people think that it hides muzzle flash. They think they know what muzzle flash is. If you watch action movies, you'll see all kinds of bright muzzle flashes that spread from the gun and they go all out. Well, there are a few problems with that. What you're seeing shot in movies, at least from a while ago, are blanks. Blanks have gunpowder and no projectile, and they're specifically designed to have a lot of the flash and burning gunpowder out here. Now when you shoot a gun, you really don't want that at all, because what that means is that's gunpowder that is not burned in here to propel your bullet. It's burning out here and it's wasted. So for movies and TV, there are blanks that are specifically formulated to have a bright muzzle flash because it looks better on camera and that's exciting. Real bullets don't look like that most of the time, especially when shot during the day. At night they will. Different guns and different loads of bullets will have some flash, but it's nothing like what you see on TV at all. And so this doesn't really hide the flash either. What happens is, if you can see these lines here, it's got openings on the top and the side. The purpose of that is that as the muzzle, the bullet exits the muzzle, and we have these hot gases expanding and the gun recoils, it's going to push up. And it's vented on the sides and the top, not on the bottom, to vent out the gases to the side and the top, hopefully to push the muzzle down again. So your muzzle rise is going to be less. That's really the purpose of this. It's called a flash hider. It doesn't really hide anything. And you can actually do some YouTube searches and find some interesting examples of videos shot with different types of muzzle devices and see how they hide the flash or not. Now again, you're not really going to see much muzzle flash at all on modern guns unless you see it in slow motion, and you can see it then, or at night you'll notice them. So these really don't hide much. They're designed to control the rise of the muzzle. But because they're called flash hiders, they are an illegal item on a gun, which will turn it into an assault weapon. You could have a muzzle device that looks very much like this, and you've got to have something on the end of your barrel, but just a little bit different design. A muzzle device are called a compensator, and that's not illegal. So again, arbitrary terms that don't really mean much at all. Now, a lot of people get around this by making what are called featureless guns. And it's easy to get around bogus definitions because they don't have any meaning at all. So if you have a gun like this, people call these California compliant. What it does is it gets rid of the pistol grip, has an angled foregrip, adjusts the muzzle device a little bit, and has a solid stock that doesn't adjust. This could be a legal semi-automatic firearm rifle in California, and it's not an assault weapon because it doesn't have any of the illegal features. Does it shoot just the same? Yes. Is it just as damaging if you're on the wrong end of it and someone has it in the wrong hands? Absolutely. So you can see that having definitions which are arbitrary really just don't help at all. So something else I'd like to tell you again is that the definition of an assault weapon is all based on centerfire cartridge. You know, these medium to larger size calibers. I have a gun here that has a pistol grip, has this stock is not adjustable, but it's foldable. See, I can fold that up, and I even have a vertical stock on it. And looks like that's a flash hider as well. See this gun here? But this would not be an assault weapon because this is a Ruger 1022. It fires a 22 long rifle bullet. So no restriction has ever been made on a gun of this caliber, regardless of the assault weapon-like features that it has. And on an AR-15 like this, with all of its dangerous assault weapon features, you can actually convert this to shoot 22 long rifle and make it a rimfire gun. How do you do that? Well, these guns are very modular. And one of the nice things about this design, and you can thank a guy named Eugene Stoner for that, for trying to come up with a modern rifle that was light and a smaller caliber, it has a free-floating bolt. You just pop this out of the gun. You get a little kit that has a 22 caliber bolt with magazines that hold 22 caliber, fits in the same gun, and now you've got a rimfire gun. So no matter what you have on it, it can't be an assault weapon. So you can see trying to ban guns based on arbitrary, made-up definitions just doesn't work. These aren't evil, violent people that are trying to get past reasonable laws. They're people that are just trying to own legal guns and other firearms, and they're finding themselves not limited by laws that didn't make any sense in the first place. So what we have here is a very, very popular American rifle. Now, you might like to hear some politicians and news media representatives talk about evil mass shooters and how it's a popular gun for them. Well, they get what they can get their hands on. Evil people and crazy people, you just can't second guess what they're going to do. They're nuts. They're evil. Why are there so many of this gun around? Some estimates put it 9, 10, 11 million, and that was a while ago in the United States. Why is this gun so popular? And if it's so popular, can it be that bad? Well, many things go back to its design. Now, what you have to remember is that this gun, the AR-15, has been legally available to law-abiding citizens in the United States for over 50 years. As a modern gun, its design really goes back to the 50s and the 60s. Eugene Stoner designed this gun to be, there is a military variant of it, of course, we know as the M16. He designed it initially for the military, and the idea behind it was a lightweight gun using polymers, aircraft aluminum, shooting a smaller round, so it's overall more lightweight. With that free-floating bolt, it's really easy to shoot, has light recoil compared to almost any other rifle, and it's very modular. You can see you can put any number of things on it. Laser pointers, scopes, red dot sights, grips, just kind of whatever, and really make it your own. In many ways, it's sort of the Jeep of guns. It's just a favorite and easy to work on and a well-performing gun that a lot of people in America like to use. It actually really symbolizes, in many cases, American ideals and American military doctrine. Soldiers who have been in armed forces have used a military or an assault rifle or automatic version of these, and because of that, they're familiar with this use and like to use it. So its popularity is for those kinds of reasons. It's not designed for mass murder, and it doesn't really appeal to psychopaths and mass murderers. It just happens to be that it's a very widely made and loved and used gun. So there you go. Common semi-automatic rifle that is really no different than dozens, if not hundreds of other rifles. Now, I did mention assault rifle. So let's talk about that for a moment. I have some examples here, and these really are just airsoft examples, so nothing to get worried about. But this is an airsoft example of a modern assault rifle, as are quite a few of these here on the wall. And the nice thing about airsoft rifles is that they're patterned after real guns, and they work just like real guns, especially the higher quality ones. In fact, you can actually use them for training, for all kinds of things relating to real firearms. This is a model of a weapon called an HK-416. And this you could technically call an assault rifle. So what is an assault rifle if you're going to use that term? Well, the real definition is a mid-caliber small arms rifle that is used by police and military forces, but most importantly is something that has select fire capabilities. And this is what I mean by that. If you look at the selector switch, it's on safe, and I can flip it up there to semi-automatic, and flip it here to fully automatic. That is select fire. So any true assault rifle is going to have select fire capabilities and have some form of automatic fire. Fully automatic or a burst, which means that when you hold down the trigger, you'll get, say, 3 bullets at a time. It's a type of automatic fire. That's select fire, meaning you can select the rate of fire that you want. That is an assault rifle. By contrast, an AR-15 or a legal semi-automatic rifle does not have select fire. If you look at my selector switch there, I've got safe and I've got fire. And that's it. That's all it does. It doesn't go any other place. It does not have the capability to fire fully automatic. So what does that mean? Well, it will fire one shot for every trigger pull. So for example, if I check this out here, I have it on fire, and I pull the trigger, it'll shoot one bullet, it'll eject the casing, it'll cycle to the next one, and have the next one ready, the trigger resets, and then I can shoot another one. Really like any rifle. That is semi-automatic, not fully automatic. So you may hear people talking about these types of guns and assault weapons and rate of fire. And you may hear scary things like 700 rounds per minute. Can this shoot 700 rounds per minute? Well, rounds per minute cannot apply to a semi-automatic weapon because you only get one bullet per trigger pull. How fast you shoot it really depends on how fast you can pull your trigger and let go and pull your trigger and let go. And you don't measure things like that. Rounds per minute only applies to fully automatic weapons. And this is not a fully automatic weapon. So in the case of, say, an M16, most people have heard of M16s, and they go back to the Vietnam War when they were first used by the military. Again, this is a civilian version, the modern variant of that. And M16s and its modern variant, which is called an M4, and this would be an M4 right here, can shoot fully automatic. Again, selector switch for select fire, and they can start at 700 rounds per minute and go up from there. But what does that really mean, 700 rounds per minute? It's kind of like miles per hour. If you drive 60 miles per hour, you don't have to drive an hour before you get to that rate. And in fact, it's really impossible to shoot 700 rounds a minute from a gun like this. That's a theoretical rate of fire. Remember, you've got a magazine, and the standard capacity for these guns is 30 rounds. Okay? So once you shoot 30 rounds, you're done. The magazine's empty, your bolt locks back, you have to drop the magazine and insert a new one. So you're not going to get more than 30 rounds at a time before you have to change it. And if you hold down that trigger and you pull it and fire fully automatic, you're going to empty a magazine, a 30-round magazine, in probably less than 3 seconds. And now you're out of bullets. So people don't really fire, even assault rifles, fully automatic that often for that long. Even in military situations, it's often more reliable, more effective, more accurate to shoot semi-automatic because you can aim, place your shot, shoot, aim again, place your shot, shoot. And often squads will have a squad automatic weapon, a saw. And so a military squad will have someone with a saw, squad automatic weapon, that's a large, fully automatic machine gun. But that would be one individual in a squad of several there. So even those that have select fire capable weapons will often be using them as semi-automatic fire. So the whole point I'm trying to make with this is that there's really no need to be afraid of machine guns or fully automatic weapons because number one, they're just not that useful in most situations. And number two, the guns we're talking about, especially the ones that politicians want to ban, aren't automatic anyway. Now there are automatic weapons out there, and they're available in some states. Some ban them completely. But they're rare and they're costly. And in order to qualify for one, you have to have an extended background check. And these are all banned after 1986. So if you do live in a state that allows you to have an automatic weapon, you have to find someone that wants to sell it. You have to come up with thousands of dollars to buy one. And again, the numbers aren't growing, they're diminishing. So it has to be made pre-1986. You have to qualify for an extensive background check. So these are collector's pieces. And ones that are obtained legally just aren't used in crimes because they're too costly, too rare, too hard to get, and the people that get them are legal and law-abiding. So these really aren't the problem. if anything, it would be ones that are obtained illegally on the black market. But in all the shootings in recent history, in decades and decades of terrible shootings, whether it's common crimes or mass shootings, none of these are being done with automatic weapons. So there's no need to talk about rapid fire, 700 rounds per minute, military style weapons, or anything like that, because that's not the problem. Now again, I'm going to state that the guns that are in question here are semi-automatic. So I'd like to give a few demonstrations of the various types of guns, how they function, and how you can really distinguish one gun from another. So to start off with one end of the spectrum, I have an airsoft example of an HK MP5. This would be a submachine gun or a select fire gun. So if I put it to semi-automatic, fires once per trigger pull. Fully automatic, and again this is what would qualify something as a machine gun, is like this. Alright, so you can kind of see that happen. And semi-automatic. So there's our example there, our analogy with an airsoft gun. Now let's look at some real guns. Modern pistols are semi-automatic. This is an example of a modern pistol. It is a Springfield XD 9mm, and this is the way that it would work. Detachable magazine, and by the way, for this example I'm actually using dummy rounds here, so these will not fire, but I'll show you what happens in a modern pistol. So you have the magazine in, and if there is a round in the chamber, this tells me if it is, you shoot, the recoil of the bullet will actually push the slide back and will load up another round in the chamber, and the empty shell casing falls out. And so that is semi-automatic. So this would be, modern example of a gun like that. All guns function on this same principle. This is a slightly older version of the same type of thing. This is a Beretta, slightly smaller caliber, a 32 ACP, and if you fire it, the slide will go back. And this one actually locks back because it's empty, but you can see the magazine in the grip and the slide goes back and forth. And the semi-automatic action is what happens right here. Now, what's interesting about this is that this design, when I talk about modern pistols, is not new. As an example, this is a Browning High Power 9mm, and its design goes back to almost 100 years ago, designed by the great John Browning. So, magazine goes into the grip, and it has a slide that locks back when empty, but is what kicks out the empty shell casing and loads the next bullet. Right? So, semi-automatic. So we basically say all pistols are semi-automatic. We're really talking about designs that go back to not just this one of almost 100 years ago, but John Browning also designed the 1911, and that patent actually goes to the latter part of the 1800s, if you can believe it. Now, as a comparison, revolvers are technically not semi-automatic because you don't have the blowback of the bullet advancing the action of the gun. But for all intents and purposes, they sort of are, because mechanically they do the same thing. You shoot, and it will advance to the next bullet, shoot again, next bullet, shoot again, next bullet, shoot again, next bullet, until you're out. Now most revolvers, of course, hold 6 rounds. And you know that the design of revolvers definitely goes back to the 1800s. So, one shot, one bullet is an extremely old gun design. But that's really what all modern guns are. And there's no point in looking at that type of gun as being a military style gun or too dangerous for average civilian use. Next we have pump action or lever action guns. And that's what most shotguns are. And so, once again, I've got dummy rounds in here, but the way this works is that you've got, in this case, there is a magazine. It's a magazine tube. It's not detachable. So the shells all stack up here under the barrel. And to load a shell, we all know about this. Alright, so the shell is loaded and you fire. And of course the shot goes off, but that's all that happens. In order to load another shell into the chamber, you have to manually eject the shell you just shot. There it goes, and load up another one. So this is pump action or lever action. And again, most shotguns are this way. Many other types of rifles are this way as well. Now, no one has ever talked about banning guns like this, but yet a revolver and a shotgun were used to commit a horrible mass shooting at Santa Fe High School years ago. So it doesn't really matter the gun, it matters the evil person who has the gun and what he intends. By the way, something that you might want to know is that shotguns are extremely effective for close quarters combat, and again, can be and are military weapons. And unlike a gun that is magazine fed, you don't need magazines to load a shotgun. So as long as you have shells on you, you can actually keep shooting a shotgun by doing what's called combat loading. So I will demonstrate here. Shell goes in, shoot. Shell goes in, shoot. Shell goes in, shoot. Shell goes in, shoot. And you can keep doing that for as long as you have shells on your pockets, around you, whatever. So a shotgun could be an extremely effective weapon for lots of mass carnage if it's in the wrong hands. What I'm demonstrating here is just not that hard to learn how to do. So, has anyone talked about banning shotguns? No, they haven't, but if you think about it, with a shotgun you've got an incredible array of ammunition that you can use. Not only could you use a slug, which is basically one bullet that's the size of that shotgun tube, but you also have birdshot. And birdshot would be quite a few pellets, again designed for shooting small games, but you could also have buckshot. And look at those. Each one of those is basically one bullet. And you could hit multiple targets and do a lot of damage in a small area with a shotgun. They're really good for personal defense and good for close quarters situations, as well as for hunting and all sorts of things. But like any weapon, in the wrong hands, it can do terrible damage. The problem isn't the design of the gun itself or what it's shooting out, it's who's behind it. Now let's talk about magazine capacity. Again, remember to say magazine and not clip so that you don't annoy the gun nuts. So the capacity is different depending upon the gun as far as what is its standard or intended capacity. You hear a lot about extended capacity magazines and banning them. Well, what does that mean? For a little Beretta like this, because it's sort of a small gun, its capacity is 12 rounds. And this is a 12-round magazine that goes in this gun. There we go. So the gun has a magazine capacity of 12 rounds. For most full-size modern pistols, the standard capacity is about 15. For this Springfield XD, its standard capacity is a 16-round magazine. That's what goes in it. The capacity, of course, will change depending upon the caliber of the gun. For a larger caliber, 10 millimeter, 45 caliber will be fewer rounds in the magazine, obviously. Now, the usual limit is decided to be 10 rounds. For what reason that is, I don't know. But this is an example of a 10-round magazine for this gun. This gun was initially purchased in California, and so it had the 10-round magazine limit, and that's all that could go in it. But notice how it's not a function of the gun, how many rounds it can take. It's a function of the magazine. This gun easily takes the 10-round magazine, just as easily as it takes the 16-round magazine. And for miniguns, I think even for this one, there are extended capacity magazines that hang out a bit farther. So capacity really is just relative to what you put into the gun. Now I'd like to show you something that you'll never see in an action movie, and this is something people that talk about magazine limits don't seem to understand. The gun holds the magazine, but it also has a chamber. So if I have a magazine here, and here's my 10-round California legal magazine, I put it in the gun. But when I rack the slide, there's now one in the chamber. I can drop the magazine, which would now have 9 rounds in it. I can put an additional round in the magazine and put it back in the gun. So I have 10 plus 1 or 11 rounds. So any limitation of 10 rounds to a magazine really means 11 rounds in the gun. I don't know if people that talk about this type of law or limitation really understand that. And that really goes the same for any type of gun that takes an external magazine, or even an internal magazine. It's got the magazine itself that holds its whatever number of rounds they're going to be, plus it has a chamber that can hold 1 additional round. So you always have that. And there are further problems. This is a pretty common USGI magazine for an AR-15 or similar weapons, and the standard capacity for rifles like that is 30 rounds. This would hold 30 rounds. But this is a California legal, or perhaps other states legal as well, and it has been crimped to allow the follower to not go down so far. So I have my California sticker on it to remind me of the limitations of this magazine. Even though it looks like it is a full capacity magazine, it's only going to hold 10. But you can't tell really by looking at it. Now, there are actual 10-round magazines that are made to hold that. This is one. And trust me, it looks really silly stuck there in your AR-15. So this is designed to hold 10 rounds. I can actually cram 11 rounds into it. And as these all come apart for cleaning and maintenance, it wouldn't be too hard to remove some plastic at the bottom and have that follower go down a bit more to be able to perhaps cram another round or 2 in there. So trying to limit what a magazine can hold really is a losing game. As an example, this was a magazine that was initially a full capacity magazine, limited for sale in California by having a pin inserted here to stop the follower from going down the full way. That pin can be removed, and now it's just a standard capacity magazine. Much like this one, 30 rounds, 30 rounds. Can't really see the difference. So again, 30 rounds is standard capacity for modern rifles. Again, when I say modern, I'm really talking about this type of action with the semi-automatic firing. It goes back 100 years. Really, the most modern rifles have a design that goes back at least 50 years. So these aren't brand new cutting-edge technology. This is too deadly for common use. It's been around a long time. Again, the AR-15 has been available for legal public sale for over 50 years. So again, 30 rounds is considered the standard capacity. Are there extended round magazines? Absolutely. There are 40 round magazines. There are 60 rounds. There are even drums that can hold 50 to, I think a double drum will hold 100 rounds. Now, those are restricted in some places they're not. But the magazine capacity, again, is not the problem. Why is that? If I've got my standard pistol here, even with a 10-round magazine, and I fire my last round, it's going to eject it. It'll lock back like this. Notice that what you'll see in the movies a lot is that when a modern gun goes empty, the protagonist or the antagonist will go click, 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 and not realize it's empty. Modern guns don't work that way. When you shot your last shot, your slide will lock back like this. So it's obvious that you're empty. And once you're empty, even if it's a 10-round magazine, guess what? And you're ready to shoot again. So magazine capacity is just not a problem because just swap it out. Now, there are mechanisms, on rifles anyway, to make it more difficult to drop an empty magazine. But these are impossible on pistols, and if you want to get past that barrier, that's easy enough to do. So, magazine capacity, trying to limit that, is not really going to solve the problem if the gun is in the hands of the wrong kind of person. Hopefully the items and issues we've gone over here show you how magazines really work in modern guns, what they do and what they don't do. So when you're talking about gun violence, remember that more deaths are because of handguns like this, or any number of hundreds of varieties, than any other type of gun, handguns. Now, when you look at gun deaths, you need to remember that for some reason, year after year, the number hovers about the same, or the percentage, and that's about 66% are suicides. Terrible tragedy though that is, it's not a crime, and the way to attack that is through different methods. But after that, most violent gun deaths are criminal acts with handguns that are obtained illegally, meaning the law has already been broken to have someone that should not have a gun have one to perform some type of criminal act. People being shot by what's called an assault weapon, and we've seen how difficult it is to try and define what that is, especially with laws. That's really the rarest type of gun violence. Now, no one wants gun violence, whether it's criminal, accidental, suicides, or whatever. But before you really want to try and attack that and see how can we reduce it, you've got to know the facts. Know what guns are and what they're not. And if you don't, all you have to do is educate yourself. There are plenty of videos out there, I'm sure better than mine, on YouTube and other places that will give you this information. So educate yourself first, then look for a solution. So let's remember that owning a handgun or a long gun, rifle, shotgun, any type of weapon, really is it's a right, and it's something that we as Americans have and have been guaranteed by our Constitution. Let's protect it, let's defend it, but let's also be reasonable with it. And if there are misunderstandings, let's try and correct those. My hope is that everyone, regardless of their background or opinion, or their stance on guns, would at least know what the truth is and then act accordingly.